That's right. It's time for the headliner presented by Miller Lite. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic. Cody, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Very good, very good. Okay, so we don't really need to mention the game against the Brewers, but we did see a rare position player pitching with Travis Demare on the mound. As someone who covers the team day in and day out, do you like the novelty of seeing this, or does it make you cringe?
Well, some of both, right? When you're watching a 19 to nothing game, it's easy to tune out in the sixth or the seventh or the eighth, and then come the ninth, it's like, hey, a position player's on the mound. At least this is interesting to see how cringeworthy it's going to be, see how bad it's going to be. Travis Demeritte, did the best he could. He was throwing 81, which I think is better than some position players I've seen. He got out of the inning. I think he only allowed one homer, so could have been worse. It was cringeworthy, but it also piqued my interest. I watched the ninth inning more closely than I did the eighth, so we'll put it that way.
Hey, pros and cons. I get it. Okay, so
Yeah,
something else that was good. Before the game, two players of Puerto Rican descent. We saw Joe Jimenez and Alex Claudio of the Brewers. They met before the game wearing number 21 in honor of Roberto Clemente Day. When you think back on Roberto Clemente's legacy, what things stand out to you?
I mean, Roberto Clemente is probably the ultimate statesman for the game of baseball, and obviously just a tremendous humanitarian. Beyond that, that's why he's honored with this day. That's why the Roberto Clemente Award, which is essentially a public service award, is named after him. I mean, I think when you think of humanitarian works, efforts, in baseball, you think of Roberto Clemente, all the things he did for his home people in Puerto Rico, for things he did, for people in a more quiet nature, just day to day. I mean, I reported a story on what aging athletes and their families do with all of their memorabilia, and the Clemente family sold most of Clemente's awards and certain other items from his career a couple of years ago in an auction, which is not uncommon. But I talked to the director of that auction. He said that Vera Clemente, his wife, and Roberto had talked about this even when Roberto was living, that they knew that his items would be of some value and they wanted to find a way to make sure those went to charitable efforts. So when the family finally decided to sell, I think the vast majority of those proceeds went to his foundation. And I just thought it was interesting to learn that even Roberto was alive and playing. He was kind of cognizant and planning ahead. That's just a very small example of the type of things that Roberto Clemente means to baseball.
I know he meant a lot to the game of baseball and a lot to the community. So let's talk, though, about some positives with the Tigers this year.
Sure.
Victor Reyes is having a breakout year. So, what has been different about him specifically this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just experience. I think the Tigers kind of made a bet on Reyes a couple of years ago when they took him in the Rule 5 draft, when they more or less stashed him for the majority of the 2018 season, and he didn't play a lot, and it was tough, and it was almost a risk. Is he still going to be able to develop? Obviously, we saw him play pretty well for stretches last year, and there were questions. Can he sustain it, right? A guy who doesn't walk a lot, who doesn't hit for a ton of power, he had a high batting average in balls in play. So is this guy going to be able to really come out and hit 300 again? Well, yeah, he's doing that. He's actually playing even better. This is a guy who, some of the metrics aren't favorable, but then you look, his on base percentage entering today was over 340. He was hitting over 300 again. He's hitting a ton of line drives. Now he's playing center field and he's playing very well. So it's kind of a testament to something the Tigers organization saw in him, and the player development staff and the major league staff put in work to kind of help this guy realize his potential. And it really, maybe it's still a little early, but it seems like he is going to be able to stick, that at least his hitting ability is for real. So it's kind of cool to see a success story like that, to see some hard work pay off, and really kind of a win for the whole organization, because it was kind of a gamble, a bet to take a guy like that. And right now it's really paying off.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've also seen a big year from Jamer Candelario, Willie Castro, and we're getting a good look at other young players like Isaac Paredes and now Daz Cameron. Is this the beginning, do you think, of a core we'll see in Detroit for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really know what the core of this team will look like in 5 years or so, but these players are all here for a reason. The Tigers hope that the majority of them can be future cornerstones, or at least major pieces in this rebuild. I mean, you look at Casey Mize, Tarek Skubal. I think we all know that those are the guys that this franchise has kind of chose to build around. The idea of Isaac Paredes, sticking around for a long time to come is certainly an ideal scenario. And then to see a guy like Jamer Candelario, who his future was kind of in jeopardy at one point. It was like, does he really have a future in this organization? Suddenly he's the hottest hitter on the team, and it's become a little more than a hot streak. He's 32, 33 games of sustained performance. So now he's written himself back into that future conversation. You bring up another guy like Daz Cameron. It's been fun to watch, right? I think this year's a lot about laying the groundwork for the future. Some of the oddities of the 60-game season have almost allowed those opportunities to come up, and it's cool to see the Tigers still be relatively competitive while still having this young energy, while being able to see that future come into focus a little more, right? That's really been the cool thing to watch about this season for sure.
Couldn't agree more. And let's dive more into two guys you talked about. Let's talk about Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal, some other guys that we're getting a good look at this season. Skubal will take the mound for the Tigers in Game 1 today. What are you looking for Skubal to do today against the Cards?
I mean, ideally he could follow up his start from last weekend where he was phenomenal, where he didn't allow a hit until I think the fifth inning, where he was, you'd like to call it his arrival. Granted, baseball is a complicated game. Things don't always go as you plan. Even if he has a setback or doesn't pitch as well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a setback. But we really got a glimpse of Tarek Skubal's ability in his last outing. You saw him using that whole arsenal. He's really made this changeup into an effective pitch, and he changed the grip on that at Matthew Boyd's suggestion before his last outing. It really paid off. I still think there's more to come from his curveball once he gets the hang of that a little bit. This is the Tarek Skubal we saw in spring training that we had heard about for a long time. We finally saw that come to fruition, and in an ideal world, we'll see him continue to do that for a long time. And obviously his next chance to do it is today against the Cardinals.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to watching it. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about this injury bug that's been biting the Tigers a bit this season. If there's another injury, who should we look to be the next player to be called up?
Yeah, it's tough to know. I think it depends on the position. It's kind of scary when Jonathan Scope got hit on the wrist the other night, and it was scary at first. It was like, this going to be broken? Is this another Jacoby Jones situation? Luckily, at least for now, seems to just be a bruise. He was in the lineup. It seems like he's going to be good. But when you look at this infield depth and the injuries they have, the Tigers are kind of about out of guys on the 40-man roster, especially in the infield. So who would they bring up next? That's a really good question. Zach Short, who they just traded from the Cubs, is on the 40-man roster, but he wasn't, he hadn't really been playing until just a couple of weeks ago. So could he earn a shot this quickly? Could they have to, find some outside help, bring back a guy like Brandon Dixon, in the outfield? We have Derek Hill up here now. We have Daz Cameron up here. Those things are good, but it also speaks to depth is getting pretty thin. Another injury, especially if it's a position player, would not be good, and I think the Tigers would really have to make some hard decisions about how to fill that spot. So I don't have a great answer to your question, and honestly, it's kind of a worst-case scenario after losing Jacoby Jones, after losing CJ Cron, after losing a few other pitchers. I think the Tigers really, really can't afford another injury like that, especially as this season gets into crunch time.
Well, fingers crossed we don't run into that issue. But
Yeah.
looking beyond Thursday, the playoff push will come down to matchups against AL Central teams. What do you think the Tigers need to do to reach the playoffs?
Yeah, you got to continue to hit, right? I think guys like Candelario, guys like Reyes that we've talked about, you can't have them level off. They've been kind of carrying this lineup, and that's helped make them competitive. I think you want to continue to get better outings from your starting pitchers. We've seen it happen a little bit with Spencer Turnbull, with Tarek Skubal, Matthew Boyd until this game against the Brewers was looking good, but you need him to finish strong. I think the bullpen is really going to be the biggest key. The bullpen's kind of carried a heavy load all year. You've had guys, Brian Garcia, Gregory Soto, Jose Cisnero pitch really well. It's been a pleasant surprise. But again, this bullpen continues to be taxed. Guys like Joe Jimenez have struggled. Buck Farmer's struggled recently. Even Soto and Cisnero, haven't been great in their most recent outings. So can they hold up down the stretch? Can they provide key relief innings? Or could this bullpen collapse? I think that might be the biggest question in determining whether the Tigers can hang on in this race. You need a guy to step up in the bullpen. You need these other guys who have been pitching well to continue to pitch well, maybe even against the odds a little bit.
I couldn't agree more. It seems that pitching is the storyline of this season. Okay, so Cody, we're going to put you on the spot here and
Ooh, all
ask
right.
you who you think the Tigers MVP has been at this point in the season.
Ooh, a tough question. I would say Reyes, Candelario, and Scope are all right there in that conversation. I think Jonathan Scope is their wins above replacement leader right now, and he's obviously a veteran presence who's made a big difference in more intangible ways, just bringing some experience to the club. He's their home run leader, so I'd probably go with Jonathan Scope. Although Candelario or Victor Reyes might have a shot to unseat him here in the past couple of weeks if they keep hitting like they have been.
Ooh, I like it. It's almost a tie, if you will. All right.
Yeah.
Well, before I let you go, the Athletic celebrated a milestone, surpassing 1 million subscribers yesterday. Is there a message to your readers you'd like to send with that
Well,
milestone?
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I think just definitely thanks for all those who have read and subscribed and stayed with us, especially through this pandemic, through some hard times, maybe hard financial times. We wouldn't have made it this far as a company, obviously, without the readers. It's been such a blessing and so cool to see it grow now to 1 million subscribers. And I think the company, the next goal is 2 million. So there's a quick plug. There is a special limited time you can sign up for. I think it's like $1 a month right now. We're trying to get more people on board. So if you don't already subscribe, I hope you'll come check it out.
Love it. Shameless plug.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody, so much for joining us today on The Headliner. Brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Back to you, Daniela.